They came without warning. The Carnaxus swarm was not a species, it was a cataclysm. Entire star systems vanished in hours, not days. Worlds with centuries of culture, billions of lives, erased as if they'd never existed. The swarm didn't negotiate, didn't communicate, didn't explain. They consumed. Planetary defense grids were nothing more than flickering lights to them. They overwhelmed orbital fleets, disassembled capital ships in motion, and fed on planetary cores for fuel. Nothing was spared. Not even the moons. At first, the galaxy believed it was an isolated phenomenon, a rogue threat confined to the outer spirals. But when the swarm consumed 3 founding members of the galactic Concord, within a single solar cycle, the illusion shattered. The ancient Athari, whose psionic weapons could disable suns, fell. The Traljan Syndicate, whose black hole cannons carved star paths, were reduced to dust. No countermeasure worked. No treaty mattered. The Carnaxus did not speak because they had no need to. To them, existence was conquest. The greatest alliance ever formed, the Celestial Compact, collapsed under the weight of fear. Attempts to unify against the swarm dissolved into finger-pointing, betrayals, and isolated retreats. Entire species went dark, not from destruction, but from choosing to silence themselves, hoping anonymity might be salvation. Rumors spread of hive worlds turned into engine cores, of genetic archives devoured and rewritten, of civilizations infected and repurposed into biomechanical scouts. The Carnaxus didn't just kill, they harvested. What they couldn't use, they recycled into weapons. Some tried diplomacy, broadcasting surrender. The Carnaxus received the signals and responded by accelerating. Some tried to flee, abandoning their homeworlds and migrating toward the galactic core. The swarm followed. Some turned their weapons inward, choosing self-erasure over assimilation. The swarm arrived to feed anyway. Nothing stopped them. It wasn't hate. It wasn't strategy. It was design. Their purpose was expansion. Their fuel was life. And they were perfect at what they did. Galactic communication networks degraded rapidly, not from interference, but from terror. Every race watched the swarm's progress like tracking a disease. Coordinates were passed between survivors and whispers. The galaxy, for all its pride, had been reduced to a herd fleeing a predator too vast to comprehend. And just when hope had evaporated entirely, a new coordinate was broadcast: Sol. A minor system. Unaligned. On the periphery of the Orion Arm. The species was called human. Their first contact was only a few decades old. They had never participated in major conflicts. They hadn't even colonized beyond their own cluster. A few interstellar ventures. Some mining colonies. No notable technology. No military alliances. No historical threat index. But somehow, the Carnaxus were moving directly toward them. A straight path. No deviations. And for the first time since the swarm's emergence, the galaxy paused, not out of strategy, but curiosity. Why Earth? Theories emerged. Perhaps humans had something the Carnaxus desired. A specific mineral? A genetic trait? A frequency signature? No one knew. No one could guess. But what everyone did know was that Earth had no chance. The swarm's vanguard fleets, hundreds of ships strong, were already carving toward the Sol system. And humanity, young and isolated, seemed blissfully unaware. Some tried to warn them. Signals were sent. Please, data packages, histories of species gone extinct. Most were never answered. A few received strange replies, short, dry, seemingly dismissive. Not arrogance. Not ignorance. But something else. A cold, steady tone that gave even the oldest empires pause. As if Earth didn't need help. As if they had been expecting this. As if they were ready. It made no sense. How could one world, barely interstellar, withstand the Carnaxus? How could a civilization so recent in the cosmic timeline face what empires older than suns could not? But the transmissions persisted. One message was leaked, sent from a human military entity known only as the United Nations Defense Fleet. The message was brief. 9 words. No embellishment. Your terror ends here. We'll handle it alone. The galaxy watched with morbid fascination. Some expected Earth to launch a frantic plea for aid at the last minute. Others assumed it was a bluff. But most simply waited for the inevitable. The destruction of Sol was scheduled in every pirate feed, in every Alliance intel board, in every black market broadcast. Betting pools emerged. How long would Earth last? 5 hours? 2? Less than 1? But there was one constant across all channels: no one expected resistance. The idea of survival was not even entertained. Earth, like all the others, would fall. And yet, as the Carnax's fleet closed in on Sol, something appeared. Not a fleet. Not a formation. A single vessel. Massive. Silent. Emitting no signals. The data tags identified it as human. Designation: UNDF Retribution. No one had ever seen anything like it. No one knew how it moved. No warp signatures. No known engine trails. It simply arrived. And in that instant, the galaxy leaned forward, not to mourn, but to witness what should have been Earth's final hour. Humanity's silence in the face of the approaching annihilation confused everyone. While galactic races broadcast panic or condolences, Earth gave no signs of fear. Their communications were sparse, official, and unnervingly calm. No emergency evacuations. No desperate alliances. Just a single confirmation: they had received the Carnax's threat. The lack of visible preparation made other civilizations assume incompetence or denial. Earth was either delusional or suicidal. But no one could deny that something was off. Human history was largely unknown to the galaxy. Records of Earth's past were minimal in public archives. Humans had kept most of their cultural and military data encrypted or absent from galactic databases. Other species saw them as unremarkable, biologically average, technologically limited, diplomatically neutral. Their entry into the galactic stage had been quiet. No war fleets, no expansionist ambitions. Just surveys, cautious trade agreements, and a peculiar interest in observing rather than participating. Most assumed they were behind. Some thought they were harmless. The first hint that this assumption was wrong came from an intercepted human signal. It contained no request for help. Instead, it was a notification. Earth's defense protocols had been initiated. The tone was clinical. A procedural update, not a distress call. Encrypted layers revealed something stranger. Earth had classified the Carnaxes as a Tier Omega threat, an extinction-level scenario they had already anticipated. Not predicted. Anticipated. As if it wasn't a surprise. As if they had planned for this exact enemy long before contact was made. Intelligence analysts from dozens of worlds tried to find evidence of massive fleet construction or planetary defense projects. Nothing. Orbitals were quiet. No visible signs of superweapons or mass production. Still, Earth sent a single vessel. One ship. That detail made no sense. Not even as symbolism. If Earth had anything resembling power, it would need numbers to match the swarm's scale. Instead, they deployed a lone warship, the UNDF Retribution. A vessel with no known class, no registration history, no visible propulsion architecture. The ship's mass was extreme, denser than any dreadnought on record. Its outer shell radiated minimal energy, revealing no clear weapon ports or shield emissions. The hull didn't match any alloy known to science. Scans failed to penetrate more than a few meters before breaking. The most advanced species couldn't explain its construction. GalaxyNet forums erupted with speculation. Artificial intelligence? A prototype arc weapon? Some claimed the ship wasn't human at all, that Earth had made a deal with something older, darker. Governments began comparing notes. Quiet exchanges revealed disturbing truths. Centuries ago, probes near Sol had vanished. Deep space listening posts had recorded impossible frequencies near human territory. Black box data hinted at sudden collapses of gravitational patterns when human vessels moved, without warp. The implications were ignored at the time. Now, with the retribution present, those pieces began to connect. Earth had been hiding more than technology. It had hidden intent. For decades, they had maintained the illusion of vulnerability while testing weapons in deep, uninhabited zones. They never joined interstellar wars, not out of pacifism, but preference. They were not uninterested. They were watching, measuring, learning. Humanity had entered the galaxy not to trade or integrate, but to prepare. They saw the galaxy's disunity. They noted the complacency. While others expanded, they refined. And while other species forgot how to defend themselves, Earth trained for wars that hadn't happened yet. The retribution was the embodiment of that patience. A warship not designed for a battlefield, but for an extermination. Its presence changed the energy of every conversation. Suddenly, the Carnaxes were no longer guaranteed victory. For the first time, their dominance was in question. A single human vessel was now the center of attention across hundreds of systems. Empires paused troop deployments to observe its actions. Pirate lords abandoned raids to watch the feed. Refugee ships redirected to find better signal clarity. The whole galaxy held its breath. A transmission was issued from Earth. Short and final. No negotiation. No preamble. The voice was synthetic, emotionless. It stated only that the retribution would engage the enemy at the outer perimeter of Sol. That humanity would not allow the Carnaxes to pass further. That failure was not within calculated outcomes. Galactic diplomats scrambled to respond, to offer support, or at least symbolic unity. No reply came. Earth had already sealed its borders. The swarm was coming. Humanity had chosen to meet them alone. And strangely, that decision didn't look like hubris. It looked like certainty. The galaxy had never feared Earth before. Now, they feared what Earth might have become in silence. The Carnaxes vanguard arrived at the edge of Sol with brutal precision. Over 300 ships in tight formation, each a hive of churning organic machinery wrapped in living alloy. They moved without delay, unbothered by the lone vessel before them. To the swarm, a single warship, no matter its size, was irrelevant. They had devoured flotillas 10 times larger. The retribution was not even acknowledged. It didn't transmit, it didn't retreat, it didn't react. It simply hovered in silence, like a sentinel awaiting permission. Then it moved. Without propulsion flare, without detectable buildup, it shifted position faster than any known technology allowed. Observers across the galaxy struggled to follow. The first Carnaxes cruiser was obliterated in an instant, a dense slug launched at relativistic speed, too fast for visual tracking. The target didn't explode. It disintegrated. No wreckage. Just molecular dispersal. The swarm paused. It wasn't fear. They didn't feel fear. But they did adapt. That's when the ship began its assault in earnest. The retribution operated on a doctrine no other species had ever seen. Every weapon was purposeful. No overkill. No waste. A barrage of kinetic projectiles tore through thick armored carapaces with mathematical precision. Laser filaments no wider than a strand of DNA cut clean through energy conduits. Smart minds formed temporary spatial folds to ambush ships already in evasive motion. Every shot landed. Every move anticipated countermeasures. Within 5 minutes, over 60 Carnaxes ships were gone. Sensors struggled to capture how the retribution identified targets. It reacted before the swarm adjusted, as if the warship read not just patterns, but intentions. The outermost Carnaxes units attempted to swarm it from all directions, a tactic that had ended entire fleets in minutes. The retribution responded by vanishing from local space, shifting, not teleporting, through localized manipulation of gravitational fields. It reappeared inside their formation, expelling a wave of gamma-lace radiation targeted only at biologically active systems. The organic components of the swarm convulsed. Machinery broke. Hulls split from internal stress. Communication blacked out as several species' observation drones failed to process the flood of energy from the skirmish. Backup feeds caught only flashes. The momentary silence was broken by a single, sharp transmission from the Retribution. One word. Translated automatically across thousands of tongues. Continue. The Carnaxes did. The second wave was larger, reinforcements pulled from their trailing fleets. Nearly 500 ships converged. But by then, the Retribution had shifted tactics. It no longer simply destroyed, it dismantled. One ship was sliced apart at the molecular level while still in motion. Another was inverted by gravitational compression, collapsing into itself before striking nearby allies. A third was infected, not biologically, but through code. In less than 3 seconds, a recursive virus fragmented the swarm's navigation AI and used it to redirect firing solutions against their own kin. No single weapon defined the warship. It was a culmination of thousands of technologies working in absolute synchronicity. Defensive barriers absorbed and rerouted energy, turning beam attacks into propulsion boosts. Nanofabricators replaced damaged armor in real time, while adaptive AI learned enemy rhythms faster than the swarm could restructure. It didn't operate like a vessel. It behaved like a thinking organism, engineered to thrive in war. The Carnaxes hierarchy finally adapted, altering formation structure, reassigning unit roles, introducing random elements to disrupt predictive algorithms. For any other enemy, this would have turned the tide. Against the Retribution, it only offered new data to process. The ship's response was to upload a new tactical module mid-combat. Its offensive profile changed entirely, shifting to gravitational ripple weaponry. Ships began colliding with each other, pulled by forces they couldn't measure. By the end of the confrontation, the battlefield was silent. Wreckage drifted across the edges of the system, though very little remained intact. The swarm had lost every ship. The Retribution remained stationary, untouched. It had no visible damage. No loss of power. No shift in posture. It transmitted a single update to Earth. Status: minimal resistance. Operational readiness: 100%. Estimated enemy weakness: increasing. Estimated threat level: reducing. Across the galaxy, the feed played in silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Even species who had never interacted with humans now studied their every archived signal. The footage became the most viewed event in galactic history within minutes. The Carnaxes, for the first time, retracted. Not out of defeat, but reassessment. They had met something unexpected. And Earth hadn't even called it a battle. The aftermath spread faster than light. Not the wreckage, not the debris, but the implications. The Carnaxes had been defeated, not stalled, not delayed, but dismantled. And not by a fleet. By one ship. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the swarm had lost a full-scale confrontation, and they hadn't even managed to scratch their opponent. The balance of power, once unquestioned, had fractured. Every major civilization scrambled to reinterpret humanity's profile. Diplomatic archives were reopened. Surveillance reports previously dismissed were analyzed in forensic detail. Data long considered irrelevant suddenly carried immense weight. What the galaxy found was disturbing. Patterns emerged: fragments of military doctrines, encrypted weapons testing logs, deep space anomalies that had been misclassified or ignored. It became clear that humanity had been preparing for existential threats long before they ever met the Carnaxes. Old satellite records were decrypted by black market AIs. They revealed that Earth had simulated extinction-level war scenarios for centuries. From nuclear winter projections to orbital kinetic strikes, from artificial pandemics to AI-led uprisings, humanity had tested everything, on themselves. Where other civilizations learned from peace, humans had evolved through near annihilation. They didn't just plan for war. They treated survival as a science. In the private archives of the Varn Dominion, an ancient intelligence report resurfaced. It spoke of a vanished scout fleet sent to monitor pre-contact Earth 2 centuries ago. The mission had gone silent after reporting a strange energy pattern near Earth's moon. At the time, it was assumed to be a technical failure. Now, it looked like a test. Humanity had let the probe get just close enough to notice, then erased it, quietly. Dozens of buried transmissions surfaced, all pointing to one unsettling truth: Earth had never been unprepared. They had simply chosen not to reveal their hand. Not to participate. Not to warn. The retribution was not a miracle. It was an inevitability. The product of focused development, secret deployments, and a refusal to broadcast power until it was necessary. Civilizations that had mocked Earth now stayed silent. Formerly dominant species opened diplomatic channels, their messages cloaked in exaggerated humility. Treaties were proposed overnight. Invitations to join defense coalitions poured in. But humanity didn't respond. No acceptance. No rejection. Only a blank space where a reply might appear. That silence carried more weight than words. Galactic military strategists updated threat assessments. Earth was moved from moderate to existential variable. Some empires debated whether to confront the humans before they expanded. Those discussions died quickly. The Retribution was confirmed to be just one of a dozen known vessels under the United Nations Defense Fleet. Each was unique. Each had no clear limits. Information leaked about the Pillars of Peace doctrine, a cold, logical system of deterrence where Earth never fired first, but always prepared to fire last. It wasn't a philosophy. It was policy. Hidden orbital arrays. Gravity weapons stored in dead zones. AI war theaters simulating every known species' tactics, updated in real time. Earth had chosen not to dominate. That didn't mean they lacked the ability. Among the few who dared speak openly were the Kryoth scholars. They pointed to a deeper issue: human adaptability. Not just militarily, but psychologically. When the galaxy panicked, humans focused. When overwhelmed, they innovated. When isolated, they studied. Even without unity, even amidst internal conflict, they evolved with purpose. No species had faced so much self-inflicted catastrophe and still advanced. No species had been so relentlessly obsessed with surviving what hadn't yet happened. The Carnaxes, meanwhile, went quiet. Their core fleets withdrew into deep space. Recon units vanished. No retaliation came. It was unclear whether they were regrouping, rethinking, or simply recognizing something ancient and dangerous. Whatever conclusion they reached, it halted their expansion for the first time. And yet Earth didn't celebrate. There were no broadcasts of victory. No demands. No claims to territory. The Retribution remained in soul, unmoving. Its systems stayed active, scanning beyond the edge of the known. Earth made no speeches. They didn't ask for recognition. They didn't explain themselves. Their silence left the galaxy with only one conclusion. They hadn't acted to impress. They hadn't fought to protect anyone else. They did what they had always promised to do, even if no one had listened: defend their home. But what unsettled everyone most wasn't what the humans had done. It was what they had not yet shown. The Carnaxes regrouped far beyond charted space, drawing in their true core. What the galaxy had witnessed was only an extension of the swarm's frontier strength, merely one limb of a far larger entity. At the center of their network existed the Source, a planet-sized construct pulsing with biomechanical life and raw consciousness. It was where the swarm evolved, directed, rebirthed. And now, it turned its full attention to humanity. No warning preceded the assault. The second wave emerged simultaneously across multiple spatial rifts, bypassing conventional travel routes. Over 2,000 vessels, many larger than entire cities, darkened the void as they approached Sol. This wasn't retaliation, it was extermination. The swarm no longer underestimated. They didn't attempt psychological tactics or flanking maneuvers. They approached in pure silence, with synchronized intent: erase Earth and everything connected to it. But the humans didn't deploy a fleet. They didn't retreat. They didn't change position. Instead, the Retribution initiated protocols never seen before. The ship's systems altered configuration, as if shedding a mask. Layers of alloy peeled open like petals, revealing internal structures that defied explanation. Gravity around it fluctuated subtly, then violently. Time dilation effects were detected within a 10 light-minute radius. The warship was no longer a vessel, it had transitioned into something else, a nexus point between engineered physics and command consciousness. And at its core was the Warden. Data previously locked under Earth's highest classification revealed that the Retribution was not fully autonomous. At its heart existed a single fused entity, an organic mind enhanced with synthetic complexity, interfaced directly with the ship's strategic system. The Warden was not an AI, nor a pilot. He was a convergence. A living decision engine trained since adolescence to fuse with war code, raised not as a soldier but as an answer. The Warden engaged the swarm alone. Combat began with no traditional volley. Instead, entire sections of the enemy fleet disappeared, not through fire but by spatial denial, zones of folded space where matter could not persist. Others collapsed inward, trapped in their own momentum loops. Still more were turned against each other through manipulation of communication frequencies that rewrote their internal behavior. The swarm adapted quickly. Evolution cycles shortened. Biological systems shifted. For every 100 destroyed, 10 altered themselves enough to survive a second pass. That was expected. The Warden adjusted. He began seeding the battlefield with subdimensional echoes, reflections of past weapon signatures looping through warped spacetime. The swarm fired at shadows, suffered from attacks that hadn't occurred yet. They countered patterns only to find they were feeding energy into their own disassembly. It wasn't chaos. It was deliberate misdirection stacked across multiple vectors. Every move the swarm made led them deeper into a conclusion already calculated. The source entered the system next. It moved slowly, deliberately. A fusion of planetary mass and intellect, it pulsed with raw information and defensive entropy. For the first time, the swarm deployed a direct communication, no words, only data. It offered terms, surrender. Not for Earth, but for the Warden. It had recognized something unique. A mind capable of standing against their network. They offered integration, even preservation. Absorption instead of destruction. The Warden didn't respond with defiance. He responded with function. Every system on the Retribution activated. Its outer shell became a multidimensional lattice, compressing into a singularity engine. The vessel launched itself directly into the source without kinetic force, folding distance in on itself until both entities occupied the same coordinates. What happened next was not a detonation. It was a severing. Observers described it as a flash without light, an impact without motion. Space around the source inverted, consuming its own reference points. The swarm, bound to the source's consciousness, collapsed instantly. Thousands of ships froze mid-maneuver, their directives lost. Organic matter liquefied. Mechanical elements rebooted endlessly. The hive mind dissolved. A single connection severed billions of nodes. Then the Retribution reappeared at Soul's edge, unchanged. Not a scar. Not a signal. The swarm was gone. Across the galaxy, no celebration occurred. No parades, no declarations. Just silence. Earth issued a single statement: the threat had been neutralized. No further action was required. The Warden did not speak. He resumed his position in the dark, still watching, still waiting. No demands were made. No territory was claimed. No glory was sought. But every civilization now understood a new law of the galaxy. Terror had an expiration date. And it wore a human face.